everybody. My name is Elly Waller, and I'm a guide at Neot Kedumim. And we want to welcome you to these daily Zooms every weekday at 4 o'clock. There's an English Zoom by different guides, and it's our great pleasure to share a bit of what's going on in the park and some of the things that we learn together. I don't know if people who are on the Zoom have been to Neot Kedumim. We have people joining from around the world, and we record these sessions and we upload them onto our website so you can watch them or share them with other people as well. So Neot Kedumim is a biblical landscape reserve. It's very big. It's 625 acres, which is big by Israeli standards. And I've been guiding here since 2016, and I can never get enough of it. And it changes every single day. Every single day that I'm out there in the fields, in the shetach, it looks different. So my topic today, 1 minute, is mighty trees and flowers, symbols of the nation of Israel. Okay, I can't see it. Ah, here we are. Mighty trees and flowers. And as we know, at this time in Israel, we're going through an extremely difficult period of time. And since October 7th, and as one of the results is that there's a lot of help that is needed for the farmers. A lot of people who work in agriculture are suddenly left without farm hands, without people helping in the fields. So they've appealed to the general public, and the general public has answered the request. And there's a lot of different volunteering opportunities to be done in agriculture, which is very inspirational that people are coming forward. And I think that as a result, people are, when they go into the fields, they're suddenly coming into contact with crops and fruits that they haven't seen so up close and personal, that they might only have seen in the shops. And they fall in love with nature in Israel all over again. So it's very inspirational, but equally inspirational, and that's what I'm trying to get across today, is that the plants, the trees and the flowers are also sources of strength and might, just like we see strength and might coming through in the Israeli public and in Jewish communities around the world. So too the plants that are native to the land of Israel can also give us inspiration. And I'm going to show you a few today. And I've chosen ones that I've seen when I've walked around outside this week. So it's very, very current. Okay, so let's launch in. Let's go like this. So the first one we're going to talk about is the olive. The olive trees. We have hundreds of olive trees in Neot Kedumim, and the season of harvesting the olive trees is right now.
Eleanor,
it has its, yeah.
We still see the first one.
Oh, okay. Do you want to come and show me? Yep. Okay, Stav's going to come and help me change the slide. And until she comes, I'll just tell you a little bit more about the olive. I see it here. Okay. Okay, fine. Thank you. So the olive tree. You can have olive trees that are hundreds, if not thousands of years old. And in Neot Kedumim, we have olive trees that have been transplanted from all over the country. And they can be these wizened old great trees. Parts of them even look like they're dead. They're totally dried out and hollow. But then you look a bit closer and you see that there's loads and loads of fruit. So even though parts of the tree might look like it's dead, it's still vibrant and producing an enormous crop. And I want to talk about one of the sources in the Tanakh, in the Bible, that talks about the olive. There are many, many sources that talk about the olive. I'm taking my source from the book of Jeremiah, chapter 11, where it says, God named you, Israel, verdant olive tree, a very lively, full of life olive tree, fair, with choice fruit. And the question that the rabbis and the commentators are going to come along and ask is, why did Jeremiah choose the olive tree, dafka, to symbolize, somebody wants to come in, but to symbolize the people of Israel? So let's dig into this midrash, and it goes like this. Israel was named and compared to many other magnificent trees. Stav Mishul Menasali Kanes. To the grape, in the book of Psalms, you plucked up a vine from Egypt. To the fig, from the book of Hosea, your ancestors seemed to me like the first fig to ripen. To a date, your stately form is like the palm from the book of the Song of Songs. To the cedar, the righteous bloom like a date palm and thrive like a cedar in Lebanon, from the book of Psalms again. And we're going to come back to that quote later on. The Midrash also compares Israel to the walnut and the pomegranate. And the rabbis ask, so why was the olive singled out? If we have all of these other quotes, if we have all of these other verses that compare Israel to different trees, why does he focus on the olive? What was special about the olive? Okay, so let's go to the next slide. See if I can do it. Yes. Can everybody see that? So here you see some pictures of the olive harvest in Neot Kedumim. I took these pictures last week, and in the first picture, you can see my co-worker up on a ladder, and he's got a big stick in his hand, and he's giving the branches of the olive trees a big whack, because you have to be quite strong, and you have to give them a shake and a bang, and then the olives will fall onto the tarpaulin on the sheet that's spread out under the tree. And then you can see in the middle picture, he's got that stick again, and you can see on the tarpaulin, there's lots of leaves and lots of olives. And in the last picture, you can see that we're sorting through, there's lots and lots of leaves, and we're trying to get to the olives. So it's hard work. And this is what the Midrash says in Exodus Rabbah. Just as the olive is allowed to shrivel before it is shaken down from the tree, and then it is beaten and crushed, and then ropes are tied around the vat and heavy stones placed upon it, and only then does it produce oil, so too Israel, only after the other nations come and beat them and send them forth into exile from place to place and bind them and tie them up and surround them with armies, do they at last turn in repentance to God. Now, I don't know about you, but when I read that description and I focus in on the verbs mainly that I bolded, that I highlighted, it really is a little bit bone-chilling, because a lot of those things that I've written there, we could be talking about October 7th, shaken, beaten, crushed, tied, bound, beaten, sent into, well, exile or into captivity. It's very, very close to home. And these were the rabbis talking about what happens to the olive tree this is what you need to do to the olives in order to get to your ultimate product, to the olive oil. So too, the rabbis were saying the Jewish people through our history have had to undergo these beatings and have suffered so much, but yet they are able to emerge the other side with an incredible, let's say, product. Here you see on this slide, let me just go down if I can, over here on my screen. Yeah, I'll get it. On this slide, you can see the little jar of olive oil, pure olive oil in the center. Beautiful olive oil, which had so many important uses in ancient times. It was used in the temple, of course, for lighting. It was used in private homes for light. It was used in cooking. It was used in the sacrifices. It was used limshoach, to anoint the kings and the vessels in the temple. It had so many uses. And let's look to the source again, another source from Isaiah. Just as the oil lights up the temple, it lights up the whole world. As it says, the nations shall walk by your light. So here the rabbis are saying that Israel is a light unto the nations, just like the olive oil lights up the temple. Israel enlightens everyone by their faith. So God said to Moses in the book of Shmot, the second book of the Bible, bring the clear olive oil. You can see other pictures from the olive harvest surrounding the jug of oil, and especially look at that hand full of the olives, green olives and black olives. You don't have green olive trees and black olive trees. It just depends when you pick them. And the longer the olives stay on the tree, the darker the fruit gets. Okay, let's turn to our next slide. Okay, here we go. This is a completely different flower, different plant. This is something that I saw a few days ago. You have to go out bright and early in the morning if you want to see this plant at its best. It's called butzin in Hebrew. It's called wavy-leaved muelin in English, and it grows all over Israel. And it is a very tall plant. It can grow up to my shoulder, and it has bright yellow flowers with a sort of maroon, or what would a purpley reddish center, which is a little bit hairy. And in the morning, you see the bright yellow flowers, but over the course of the day, the flowers fall off. The slightest movement or touch that they get from a pollinator, from a bee or from a human or from a bird, and the petals will fall off. If you want to smell the lovely scent, the perfume of the butzin, you have to go out early in the morning. You can only smell that early, and then over the course of the day, it dissipates that perfume. Now, why did I bring this particular plant? Not only because it's blooming, I saw it blooming a few days ago. Interestingly enough, if you look in your guides of flowers, and normally when you get the guides of flowers, it tells you basic information about the flowers. It tells you the name in English, tells you the name in Hebrew, if you're in Israel, tells you the scientific name, which is in Latin. It tells you where it flowers, and it tells you when it flowers. And the butzin is not really meant to be flowering right now, but this particular plant didn't read the guidebook and it flowered nonetheless. So again, why did I bring this plant? Because butzin is the name in Hebrew. Butzin is from the Aramaic. Butzina means candle, candle. And indeed, if you use a little bit of your imagination, when you look at this plant with the red in the center surrounded by the yellow, it looks like a flame. And there is an Agadah. And I saw this Agadah in the in a source from Zohar Amar, who's a famous professor of botany at Bar Ilan University. He brought a beautiful story about the butzin, and it was like this. It looks, if you look at the plant, it's got a central, very tall stem, and from the sides of this stem, the other branches branch out. And you could say it looks like a candelabra or a menorah. Okay. And the bright yellow flowers, again, look like flames. We know that after the first temple was destroyed, the Judean people were sent into exile to Babylon, and there they remained for 70 years until Koresh, gave them permission to return to the land of Israel and rebuild the second temple. Not everybody answered the call, but those that came back set to the difficult work of building the second temple. But when it came to fashioning the menorah that they needed as a very important vessel that was necessary to the workings of the temple, they had forgotten how it was meant to look. They had lost the tradition and they were very distraught. So they asked their top rabbis, they asked their elders, they asked the people who should have known what the menorah was meant to look like, but they couldn't remember what it was to look like. But there were certain very elderly people who had gone out to exile to Babylon and had then come back. Remember, they'd gone for 70 years and then come back, so they are no spring chickens. They're not young people, but they came back with the returnees. And an old man stepped forward and they said to him, do you remember what the menorah looks like? And he said, look to the butzin. Look to this plant. And if you look at this plant, you will know what the menorah is meant to look like. Copy the shape of the wavy-leaved muelin. And that's what they did. And they refashioned the menorah in gold according to the shape of the butzin. Titus, when the Romans destroyed the second temple and razed it to the ground and sent the people into exile, Titus took the second menorah off to exile with him. And if you look on the Arch of Titus in Rome, you can see it depicted there. And this butzin, until this day, gives us hope that it will be a model for the third temple whenever it shall be rebuilt. And the yellow flowers that are blooming forever are like the eternal flames. Okay, let's go on to the next plant. But before we do that, I'm going to share with you a song. Okay, so this poem was written by a famous Israeli poet called Leah Goldberg. She wrote this poem in 1943. She wrote it in Hebrew, obviously, and we have a translation here. And I was looking through my sources last week and came across this poem. And I went onto YouTube because I wanted to see if it had been set to music at all. And I found some kind of old-fashioned Israeli type musical music using the words of this poem. Like if you know Nechama Hendel, who my husband likes a lot, but it's not modern. It's not a modern sound. It's the old style Rikudeyam music, which is beautiful in its own way. But then I saw that this, you can see in the corner, this is from YouTube. I'm going to play it for you in a minute. Yanina, which is a very young group. It's a young couple called Nina and Yoni. They're married and they make beautiful music together. And they set this poem to a new tune. And I started listening to it and I was completely captivated. I was listening to it on a loop. And I actually wrote to Nina on Facebook Messenger. I said, can I use this for my presentation at Neot Kedumim? She said, for sure. She loves Neot Kedumim. She got married here and she's a fan. And she was very pleased for me to use it. Yoni is actually serving in Miluim in reserve duty right now. I'm going to play the song. I'll just tell you the words. They are an ode to nature. The words are, teach me, my God, to bless and to pray about the secret of the withering leaf, the glow of a ripe fruit, about the freedom to see, to sense, to breathe, to know, to yearn, and to fail. Now, remember that Leah Goldberg is not a religious person who's not a observant person, but she's written this prayer to nature, and it really is it's praising God through nature. And it's wonderful that she's encouraging us to go into nature and to use all of our senses to truly immerse ourselves and emerge refreshed and invigorated when we're in nature. Teach my lips a blessing and a song of praise as time renews itself each morning and evening, so my day will not be like the previous one, so my day won't be a routine. I'm going to play it now. Hope you can hear it.
למדני אלוהי ברך והתפלל, על סודה לקמל, על נוגה פרי בשל, על החירות הזאת לראות, לחוש, לנשום, לדעת, לייחל, להיקשר. למדני אלוהי ברך והתפלל, על סודה לקמל, על נוגה פרי בשל, על החירות הזאת לראות, לחוש, לנשום, לדעת, לייחל, להיקשר. למד את שפתותיי ברכה ושיר הלב, להתחדש זמן חיים בוקר ועם לב, לבל יהיה מהיום כתמול שלשום. למד את שפתותיי ברכה ושיר הלב, להתחדש זמן חיים בוקר ועם לב, לבל יהיה עד ליומי הרגל.
I know it's beautiful, but I'm going to go on, if I can, yes, to the next slide. And hopefully I will share the link of that beautiful, beautiful video so you can enjoy it in your own time. Because I want to talk about the next amazing tree, the erez, the cedar. We know erez is a popular name for boys in Israel. The erez, the cedar, is the tallest tree that's mentioned in the Bible, a symbol of haughtiness because you're looking down on everybody else, but also a symbol of strength and might. And that's what I'm channeling today. So I'm referring back to that quote from Tehillim, from Psalms that we mentioned earlier. The righteous bloom like a date palm. They thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. And I want to tell you that we have quite a lot of cedars in Neot Kedumim. And the cedars that we have in Neot Kedumim, let me show you my next slide. Yeah. The cedars that we have in Neot Kedumim are not as tall as the cedar that you see in this picture. The arrow is actually pointing to Hannah HaReuveni, when she and her husband Ephraim visited Lebanon in the 30s. Ephraim and Hannah HaReuveni, famous botanists in Israel, world-renowned botanists. They are the parents of Noga HaReuveni, the founder of Neot Kedumim. He took their vision of building a biblical garden and he made it happen. And here they are in the 30s visiting Lebanon, and you see Hannah, a teeny tiny person, next to this enormous tree. Now, that grew up in Lebanon. They took seeds when they visited the cedars then. They brought them back to Jerusalem. They grew seedlings from the seeds, which became little trees, and then those trees were transplanted to Neot Kedumim between 1976 and 1981 from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. So the trees, the arazim, the cedar trees we have in Neot Kedumim are from Lebanon, but they don't grow as tall and in as imposing a fashion, nowhere near, in fact, as they do up in the north of the country towards Lebanon, because it's too warm in Neot Kedumim. We're like between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, and it's not the optimal climate for the cedar, but we had to have the cedars because it's such an important tree in the Jewish sources, but they don't grow as tall as the ones up north. But there you have it, so be it. So I want to share some sources about the cedar, talking about its greatness. Let's read the first one. This is from Midrash Tehillim. The cedar has many deep roots, so that even if all the winds of the world blow, they are powerless to uproot it. So the power and actions of David, in other words, Israel, are before the Holy One, blessed be he. Even though all the nations of the world combine against him, they are powerless to move him from place to place. So I mean, it's so frighteningly apt and appropriate for the days that we find ourselves in now. We have to look to nature. We have to look to the strength of the trees and be emboldened that we will be as strong as them, and we are. We are. Okay, let's look at the next source. Okay, this is more sources about the cedar. Okay, it says, this is from Tanchuma Lech Lecha, another midrash. A midrash is when the rabbis take a verse from the Bible, from the Tanakh, and they play with it, and they learn religious lessons from that verse. So here it says, Rabbi Tanchuma began, you find that of all the trees, there is none about which one can say at a distance, that is such and such a tree. Why? Because they are short. The other trees just aren't as imposing. But the date palm and the cedar, because they are tall in stature, are seen at a distance. So too the righteous are seen at a distance. And then there's another midrash that goes on to give lots and lots of reasons why the date and the cedar, being tall, are like Israel. And I'll just read you another one that I have here. They give off an extended shadow. They're tall. They're going to cast a giant shadow. So do the rewards of the righteous people, which reach out far. The good people, they have an enormous impact. And as it says in the verse, and it will be due to your adherence, and God shall safeguard for you. Okay, so there are other reasons why the date and the cedar are like Israel and like the righteous people, but we're going to move on to the next slide. Alrighty, this is a more obscure plant. This is a plant called Varthemia. It grows all over the country, and it's in bloom now. As I said, I've tried to highlight things that you're going to see when you walk outside right now. In Hebrew, it's called Ktela Charifa, and this is a little painting. Oh, I forgot to mention that in the corner of each of the slides are little paintings I did of the flowers and the trees. So that's what it looks like. Let me tell you about this plant. It can grow out of a rock. It's amazing to see. You have this flat rock, and growing out of it, no soil to see at all. You can see this very, very large herb. If you rub it, if you rub the leaves, it's aromatic. In Hebrew, as I said, it's called ktela, and some say it is called ktela because it can grow out of a kotel, as in the kotel amaravi, out of a wall. It has these amazing properties that it doesn't require soil, requires so little water. Very, very strong. Others think the name ktela comes from the Arabic meaning, with a kuf, meaning to kill. Why? Because it's very bitter. And so it was thought to be lethal to insects. As such, it was regularly placed in sacks of flour to ward off bugs, and it was also used when drying fruit to prevent rotting. Now, the Reuveni family, Noga's family, Chana and Ephraim and Noga, they were responsible for giving many Israeli plants original Hebrew names. They weren't happy to bring a European name and name a Israeli native by a European name or even an Arabic name. They wanted to search the sources and find something that was more appropriate. And they call this plant bar sela. Bar, which is Aramaic for son of, Ben, and sela meaning rock. The son of a rock. In other words, it grows out of a rock. So Vathemia is famous for its powerful medicinal properties, and since ancient times, it was used for a cure for any number of ailments, including stomach aches, as an antidote to poisoning, to relieve coughing, infections, fever, weakness, flu, and heart problems. It's pretty good stuff. And so I think that this Israeli native reflects our nation, Am Yisrael, particularly at this difficult time. We are incredibly strong and stubborn, full of ways to help others, and impossible to remove, which brings me to the last plant that I want to show you today. Maybe the most famous plant, the caper bush. You can see the beautiful caper flowers over here. Again, they're not meant to be in bloom right now, but I saw them in bloom. In Hebrew, it's called a tzalaf. It can really grow out of a wall. You know, you go to the Kotel, as I imagine many of you have been to the Western Wall, and there's a number of different plants growing out of the Kotel, the most impressive of which is the caper. Let's see what Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish had to say in Bava Batra about the tzalaf. You should know that the tzalaf is mentioned time and time again in the Talmud. So it was very common crop during Talmudic times. Here we go. The Jewish people among the nations. These are the three impudent ones. Impudent in the Gemara, in the Talmud, the word is ezim, which you could translate as impudent, you could translate as strong, you could translate as chutzpahdik, with chutzpah. Who are the three impudent ones? The Jewish people among the nations, the dog amongst the animals, the rooster among the birds, and some say, these are some honorable mentions, the goat among the cattle, small cattle, and some say the caper bush among the trees. So, why is the caper bush called the Ez? Why is it strong particularly? Why is it full of chutzpah? I'll tell you why. You can try to cut down the caper bush. You can try and stamp on the caper bush. You can try and burn the caper bush. You can't get rid of it. I live in Modi'in. It's a very clean city, and just around the corner from me, there's a parking lot. In that parking lot, there's an enormous caper bush. Every single year, the municipality tries to kill it in whichever way they can. They poison it, they cut it, they do everything they can. Every single year, it grows back stronger than the year before. Some people say that it's impudent because of its piquant taste. Some people say because it has these nasty spikes, hooked thorns that can rip your clothing. And I've had not one, but not two, but many shirts in Neot Kedumim ripped by the caper bush. Or some say that because it requires like no water, but it's so full in the summertime. In the warm weather, it's so full of fruit and flowers and leaves. In the wintertime, it goes into winter dormancy. It looks like a pile of dead twigs and branches. It looks like it's dead. And then when we bring people into Neot Kedumim, I'm kind of embarrassed, and I say, don't think that our grounds people aren't looking after the park, it's meant to be here, this pile of dead twigs, because in the warm weather, it's going to come back to life. And actually, if you look on my shirt, over here, I've got a stylized version of the caper flower. In fact, on all of my slides, at the top in the middle, I've got the symbol of Neot Kedumim. It's the poster plant of Neot Kedumim. Why? Because just as this flower, this plant, the caper bush, looks like it's dead and buried and it comes to life, so too Neot Kedumim. Until the 60s, there was nothing in our park. And now you look at the scene behind me, it is a flourishing, glorious nature reserve, full of the wonders of nature, of Israeli nature, where it's the most magnificent place. It has come to life, just like the caper bush. Some people even say that the caper flower is a symbol for the state of Israel. 70 years young and powerful, unbeatable, unstoppable. I'm going to stop the share now, and if anybody would like to ask me any questions, that's what I'm here for. Happy to answer questions. You can unmute yourself, I think, and happy to talk to any of you.
Thank you very much, Elly. It was very interesting.
Pleasure.
Very touching.
Yep. We need all the strength we can get.
Yes.
No, thank you.
Thanks, Sarit. Yofi. Tov. Okay, folks.
Elly?
Thank you, Elly.
Yes.
It was awesome.
Yeah, hi.
you.
Oh,
Lovely.
how are you?
Good. Good.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. I have a question.
Yes.
The caper, does
Yes.
it actually, does it get the capers that are
100%. 100%. The capers that you buy in the jar in the supermarket, the little green things that you put on your plate with the smoked salmon, they are the buds of these flowers before they bloom. The flower blooms in the middle of the night in the summertime because it's too hot for it to cope in the daytime, and it will bloom and last for 12 hours, and it will be blown by around 10 o'clock in the morning. But if you harvest those buds before they bloom and you pickle them, they are the capers that we eat and we enjoy. If you bite into a caper now, you'll see that it's full of little the stamens, because it is the flower bunched up into the ball before it blooms. Good question. You also have a caper berry, which is the fruit. It looks like a short, squat cucumber, and when it's ready to shed its seeds, it will open and spread out its seeds, and that's why in Hebrew it's called a tzalaf, and a tzalaf in the Israeli army is a sniper, because it will shoot out its bullets like the caper shoots out its seeds. Any other questions? Thanks very much for joining us.
it was
Join
lovely.
Join us Sunday to Thursday, English at 4 o'clock every day for English lectures, at 11 o'clock for Hebrew lectures, at 2:30 for activities for children in Hebrew. Bye,
Very
folks.
Bye now.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
So much. That was so interesting.
Thanks.